difficulties getting started here. Thank you for joining us for the WBC Planners and Program Managers Talk Healthcare and Life Sciences presentation this afternoon. My name is Bob Fries, and I serve as the WBC Board First Vice Chairman, and I'm also a member of the Program and Education Committee. I would like to recognize and thank program sponsors today, Coakley & Williams Construction, Exponent, ProAir, and Shapiro & Duncan for their support of this program. We also have an amazing group of WBC annual sponsors supporting this program who are listed on your screen. Thanks for your support. Please be sure to join us next Thursday, November 19th, for the Outdoor Lake House Networking in Sterling. This event will provide a great opportunity to do some coveted in-person networking in an open air environment. And fingers crossed, the weather will still be good. It's now my pleasure to introduce Sarah Collins, who will serve as the program moderator. Sarah is a Senior Vice President with HIT Contracting and was instrumental in putting this outstanding panel together for us today. She's a sector leader at HIT Contracting and responsible for the safe, skillful execution of new construction and renovation of healthcare facilities, laboratories, and other clinical environments. Sarah has led teams in the areas of operation, pre-construction, and business development. She served on the facilities staff at a world-renowned academic medical center and has helped develop several $100 million plus design, build, and P3 projects, and has led the construction of healthcare projects of all sizes. Thank you, Sarah, and let's get the program started.
Great. Thank you so much, Bob and WBC, and thank you to all the sponsors. Without you, these programs truly would not be possible. So when Bob and I started talking about a healthcare program for WBC, I guess, Bob, it was almost a year ago now, and you asked me, who should we get for panelists? And when I really thought about what do people want to hear about? What is the audience really interested in hearing about as far as topics for healthcare and the regional healthcare market? And what struck me was there are a couple big projects that everybody's talking about. And I think there was a program today, and I know there's one next week. And in no way am I knocking these other programs. I'm attending them, as many of you are, and I'm excited about them as well. But instead of focusing on a couple big projects that most of us will probably not work on, I decided, you know, when I want to know what's going on in the market, what do? Well, we call our friends, right? So I call my friends who are architects, planners, owners, representatives. And for this program, I told Bob, you know, let's do that. Let's call on some folks who deal with a whole range of owners, developers, and let's ask them, what are their clients asking for? We've had a lot of changes this year. We've had changes as it relates to COVID, as it relates to vaccine development. And what I found was when I called my friends, owners, representatives, and architects, not only were they talking about healthcare, but they were also talking about life sciences. And a lot of the time, the two topics really overlapped each other in fascinating ways. So for the panel, Bob and I decided that we should get some of these folks together and share with you some of those really exciting developments in the areas of healthcare, life sciences, and everything in between. So without further ado, we have some great panelists here today, many of whom you know, some of whom you may not. Lynn Cooper is who I call when I need to know about pharma, manufacturing, innovation. Lynn is passionate about innovation. She has some great clients who are developing things that, frankly, I hadn't heard before. She's Director of Project Management at Facility Logics. Facility Logics focuses on the healthcare, biotech, pharma markets regionally. And she is an expert in the field of construction and specifically life sciences, construction and development. Lakshmi Nalluri is a Senior Vice President at JLL, and she runs the Project and Development Services business line for healthcare in this region. And interestingly enough, she's also one of my go-to sources for how is the market doing, what are your clients asking for. And Lakshmi also looks at a lot of life sciences projects and deals with a lot of those clients as well. So once I spoke with her, it was really coming together, and we're fortunate to have her. Thank you for joining us today. Brian Sykes is an associate principal at Perkins & Will. Brian and I connect from time to time, and he does a lot of work with academic medical centers. And when I called Brian about the program, he started talking to me about Health Campus 2.0. So I said, well, what is that? Well, Brian was kind enough to put together some slides to show me what Health Campus 2.0 is. And in a moment, we'll view those as well. Brian, thank you for joining us today. And finally, last but certainly not least, Sandy Young is a senior project manager with CBRE, and she manages CBRE's life sciences practice here in the Mid-Atlantic region. Sandy's an expert on life sciences, real estate, again, biotech, pharma. Her clients are doing things that some of us have never heard of before. She's the person who calls you when she has a question that not only do you not know how to answer, but you don't even know who to call. She's actually the person to call. So thank you, Sandy, for joining us today. So with that, I wanted to start with you, Brian. I was hoping you could take us through what you shared with me about Health Campus 2.0 and how academic medical centers are collaborating with life sciences uses in your client.
Sure. Yeah, so we, at Perkins & Will, we do have a pretty decent portfolio of academic medical centers and clients across the country, if not the world. And it's a client type that I really like. They provide not just hope for the future, I think, but they deliver that kind of clinical care. And when you truly are ill and you want the best in care, you probably will wind up in an academic medical center. And our idea of Health Campus 2.0 really is coming from our friends over in the higher ed market sector, where they've been talking about Campus 2.0 now for probably 3 to 4 years, and it's really taken off. Adam Glazer is our sort of resident futurist, is what I like to call him. He's been in this higher ed and co-working space for a long time. And when we got together and we started talking about the relationship between higher ed and medicine, or eds and meds, as we all like to say, it really did sort of click that there are some subtle differences between what he's talking about with Campus 2.0 and how that could apply to a Health Campus 2.0. So real quick, you can go to the next one. What is it specifically that we're talking about in the world we live in today? And if we all get in our time machine and we go back to last year at this time, we kind of thought the election might be a little bumpy and that might cause a little bit of uncertainty. And, you know, chances are it had been a long time for those of us who design and build buildings since we had experienced a recession. So people's, you know, spidey sense might have been tingling a little bit, but we kind of thought this might be what 2020 would set up like. You know, everybody had a decent backlog. Everybody was thinking, okay, these are the projects we know that are coming out from various institutions and developers, and life looked pretty good. Next slide is what we got. And I think that's kind of what we're all feeling right now, unless you're in the life sciences market, quite frankly. And we've all had the conversations, again, for those of us who design and build buildings, which is what this group is about. Everybody's trying to figure it out, and no one has the crystal ball to sort of say, this is where I think we'll be in a year or two from now. I do think my personal speculation is that by July of next year, things will be picking up. And though I had a pretty robust panic attack in February when I realized where things are headed, you know, now I'm feeling pretty good about July and beyond. So keep going. And this is really what I want to talk about with healthcare, just in general context, right? If you are a healthcare owner, if you are a nonprofit healthcare institution or a for-profit healthcare owner, you have seen demand for your services go through the roof like none other. And where everybody knows, we all watch the same news. Various websites will tell you that various states now have no ICU capacity, all those things. What that means is that demand for healthcare services is at a unique point. But we can't forget, for those of us who really love our clients on the healthcare side, not only have they seen demand like never before, they have lost money like never before. When all of their elective procedures were canceled, that crippled their cash flow. Their revenues dropped farther. I used to tell people that like the best job you could ever get for job security was at a nonprofit healthcare institution. And I saw them furloughing people or laying people off in ways that I didn't think they would ever do. And so they felt it. They're a little gun shy right now. They're getting ready to go through a lot and they know it. But when July rolls around, the reason I'm bullish about July of 2021 is I'm hopeful that once they flip over to their 2022 fiscal year, they'll again have capital projects. Now, my friends in the life sciences, next one, this is your moment. And, you know, the late, great Eddie Van Halen is probably how you guys are feeling right now. You have more demands for your services. Developers who own Class A office and other sort of building types right now are saying, hey, can I get a lab in there? Can you tell me what's this vibarium thing? Or I've got another client over here who wants to do this type of research. Can I get a clean room in there? Some of these things are really coming about. And my friends who do a lot of this commercial life sciences work, especially out in New York, where they've just rezoned half of the city to accommodate these things, are really pretty excited about things that will be coming up over the next couple of years. So if you know the difference between a BSL-2 and, you know, a clean room, life looks pretty good. But at the end of the day, and this is how we are really approaching a lot of this at Perkins & Will, it's that all of the trends that we've talked about for the last 5 and 10 years, and we're looking ahead at 5 and 10 years in the future to see them implemented, have all been implemented like now. Like telemedicine, I've been talking about telemedicine for the last decade, and doctors would always tell me, I'll tell you about telemedicine as soon as you tell me how I'll get paid. They figured that out in March, and I don't see that policy changing. So what does that mean for healthcare facilities? You know, all of the work that was done in the first 20 years of this century around life sciences and mapping the human genome and some of those other things coming to fruition, like if you really want a stock tip, and I'm nowhere near giving you good advice, but find some good pharmaceutical companies or someone that really understands how to leverage current data science with pharmaceuticals and life sciences, and they're going to rule the world for the next 20 years. If you get them before they go public, you might be able to retire soon. But really, what does it mean that things are going to be radically sooner? We're trying to figure that out right now. Going. And so for us, the big frame about that is this Health Campus 2.0. And again, back to the revenue thing. This is traditionally how I've always thought about academic medical centers. On the life sciences side, they discover things, whether it's a new immunotherapy to treat cancer, and then they deliver that clinical care at a cancer center, or maybe it's some other sort of cardiac treatment. And then how do they deliver that? And that's really what they do at academic medical centers. They're not as market driven as some of the for-profit healthcare systems. So they have time and resources to focus on this discovery, but they have no revenues, or they took a big revenue hit. So what we really see is, next one, trying to figure out this. This is their old model. Who paid for what? You know, discovery, they got public research grants, private industry grants, and they got paid for clinical care. That's how they made their money. Big hit on the delivery side. So what we really think is this is what happens, and tech transfer has been this item on the horizon for a long time for academic medical centers. And it's interesting, I have a client in Philadelphia who is saying, you know what, because of COVID, nobody wants to be seen as not being supportive of new initiatives, and everybody's looking for revenues. And really and truly, what does this dollars look like for us? I have one client in South Carolina say, how do we leverage some of the research that we're doing with this university and help take it to market? And the real kicker to this is what we're probably going to see is some sort of co-working innovation space co-located around labs and major academic medical centers. And on the business side of this, what I'm seeing is more and more health systems are setting up venture capital funds to support these entrepreneurs. That's why I think it's going to evolve into this. And it should be, you know, it's not going to be just sort of, you know, the old adage for translational medicine was benchtop to bedside. I think you really need to look at the service lines. And then how can that happen? And I'll pick on oncology a lot. So if you got a new CGMP lab with clean rooms and all those protocols from the FDA, how does that first get delivered to your basic, we'll say phase 2 clinical trials? But then how do you take that to phase 3? How do you take those, you know, I've got one researcher that I was working with that's looking at type 1 diabetes to do this as another service line. But how do you do this at a service line level? And how do they create entrepreneurs to drive that revenue? From a space and planning standpoint, it looks a little different. And I think than it does for health, for Campus 2.0. And I talk about this TAMI faction. So if you think about WeWork, right? And everybody talked about co-working, and WeWork was this great model, and then the company blew up, not because it was a bad company, it was just a bad business. But they were really focused on technology, advertising, market, and information. You need laptops, a little bit of money, and some good coffee to make that work. It's a little bit different with health because you need some clinical and you need some benches. But what does that sort of look like with desks, corporate pods, bench space, and beds or clinical care? And that's the sort of components. If you're looking to understand how this ecosystem is going to evolve, those are the key things that you need to think through. How do they leverage this? You know, I think the one thing I'm super bullish on is not just the second half of 2021, but it is DC Metro. And when we pivot over to life sciences, I think, you know, that you'll see some examples of this, but I do want to think you to leave one other thought, which is that as opposed to the government town, what if we were the college town? What if the District of Columbia, if you look at how many people go to college and where all these various alumni land, we are consistently, no matter where you go to school, in the top 5 of where all the big name universities come. So what if, you know, we are a government and college town? How is it that we can co-locate some of these around our healthcare anchors, whether it's Georgetown or Howard or, you know, maybe even some of the new things that are coming to town? What if healthcare begins to co-locate around where Amazon's going? I think those things will all want to commingle from a larger planning strategy. And then finally, you know, what are some of the benefits? Let's take it outside of DC Metro. If we've got some other clients like down in Richmond or up in Baltimore, how do they retain doctors? How do they keep them involved? And what does it really mean? I'll say this lovingly. A lot of healthcare clients are kind of control freaks about their real estate. What if they made some good friends with some sophisticated developers who maybe didn't control the core assets like in primary hospitals, but were much more comfortable with some of these co-working facilities to help them anchor and co-locate those around their core facilities. So it may be letting go a little bit of control, maybe because they don't have the money, maybe because they want to put their money other places. But I think, you know, if the healthcare folks can just use up a little bit on control of their real estate, they could have a really great window of opportunity.
So,
and that really sums it up for me. Again, yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Brian. Let me pivot over to Lakshmi and ask you, when you think about your clients in the healthcare sector, do you see some of that intersection with life sciences? And you also sent us some information. Can you explain a little bit about both markets and what your clients are asking for in those spaces?
Thanks, Sarah, and that was very interesting, you know, what Brian said, and staying on the same lines with the impact in 2020, you know, American Hospital Association, according to them, there was an estimated $323 billion loss for hospitals and health systems in 2020. That is pretty significant. And the pandemic has not even ended yet, right? So it just creates this fiscally challenging environment that existed already, and it puts more pressure on reducing operating costs and generating top line revenue. It's just more critical than it used to be. And like Brian said, nothing's changed. It's just became very soon and now, and more important than ever. So JLL had issued, you know, the 15 real estate strategies that boost healthcare margins, and also life sciences on the same note. We kind of focused on what our clients should be focusing on, long-term strategies in order to reduce their costs and recapture revenue and continue to thrive. You know, on the healthcare side, some of the strategies include benchmarking and optimizing occupancy costs as far as the real estate occupancy goes off campus, disposing of excess assets, and what it is driven by mostly is maximizing revenue opportunities on a single site and consolidating of services with shared amenity spaces. We're seeing a lot of clients move in that direction. And it was a thought process before COVID, right? Everyone knew that's where they wanted to go, but it just—
Well, that was my next question for you was, were they going that direction before COVID, and did COVID sort of accelerate that thinking?
It did completely accelerate that thinking, and it's now taking action rapidly, much more rapidly than it was planned pre-COVID, right? Other things were reducing energy costs and rethinking workplace strategy, permanently adopting remote working policies for some of their admin functions. And telehealth, telehealth is interesting as it's shown, if you go to the healthcare slide, Sarah, it actually did not really replace the clinical space, so we kind of call it supplant and not supplement on-site care. So on-site care is not going to go away. It's just going to change how telehealth is going to respond. And telehealth actually, before COVID, as a percentage of all private insurance services was at 0.17% in Q1 of 2019, and it went up to 7.5% in Q1 of 2020. That's a pretty significant jump. It was picking pace slowly, but it just accelerated, and it's going to be here to stay, right? But regardless of the net impact of telehealth, the factors that will continue to grow demand for medical office space is growth in demand for medical services, as Brian said too. There's just more increase in demand for medical services, and then outpatient care migrating from hospital facilities. And that's again driven by, separating the acute care from wellness care, which will become a major focus in the healthcare space design moving forward. And then redesigns inspired by the integration of healthcare, because integration of healthcare is key. It has many other components beyond real estate and space. It is IT and technology that has to keep the pace and drive towards the same goal.
Same question there, Lakshmi, on integration. Do you feel like that was already happening and was already a priority, and maybe COVID had accelerated some of those initiatives?
It was already a priority, and one example I'll take is urgent cares. They were slowly and thoughtfully moving towards on-stage, off-stage care, which kind of separates and minimizes the interaction between the provider and the patient and contains the patient in the healthcare facility. And as you think about it, that's exactly what our post-COVID environment is. And in order to make that happen, which basically you need to check in the patient before the patient even walks into the facility, there needs to be no waiting room space, because you don't want patients to wait. You want patients directly going into the exam room. So this was a thought process and a model, and people were thinking about it pre-COVID. Guess what? Now it is a necessity. So it's, again, accelerating that and making us move in that direction of efficiency much faster. And, also on the inpatient side, acute care side, same thing, adaptability and flexibility. How many times have we not talked about, heard those terms? And those terms kind of bring Rush University Medical Center from Chicago to mind. That was actually a Perkins&Will project, interestingly.
Thanks for the plug, Lakshmi. Appreciate it.
I remember how within a couple hours, they converted dozens of patient rooms into negative pressure. And they were prepared and designed for that advanced emergency responses. And that is a thought process that's going to go into the new, facilities, acute care facilities that all the health systems are going to.
We actually saw a lot of our clients converting to negative pressure areas, even during projects this year. They were so desperate for the space and to get it quickly. And to Brian's point about figuring things out faster, things that were already happening, but happening faster. That was one of the things we actually saw in the field with ongoing projects.
Right, that is the key. Touchless service and, IT integration, adaptability and flexibility. We were talking about this. Now we are just rapidly putting them into action.
So let me pivot to life sciences in a purer area and ask Lynn, your company works exclusively with these firms. What initiatives were they working on before COVID? And did COVID accelerate any of those efforts? What kinds of things are you being asked to do?
So thanks, Sarah, and thank you for moderating. I'm excited to be on the panel. In terms of what we're seeing currently in the marketplace, we've seen very little drop, like you said, because we just build biotech. That's what we build. In terms of companies, what they were working on before and what they were working on now, we have companies that were working on fill finish facilities, and they are modifying fill finish lines to adapt to COVID response. We've seen medical device companies take entire buildings as is because they're on Operation Warp Speed timeline. And in that Operation Warp Speed, they have funding to accelerate their science, but they don't necessarily have funding to modify the structure around them. So that's created some hurdles. Able to innovate through all of that, but in terms of the preparation and how we can spin up and spin out of those spaces, the more efficient, like Lakshmi was saying, the more efficient and the more infrastructure that's in place ahead of time, the quicker the pivot can be made. However, the companies that we work with are oftentimes startups, and they need to be pinching every penny so the science can go forward. So it's a very careful dance between what our current urgent needs are and really sitting and listening to our clients and strategically talking with them about how the pivots are going to be made. I had a client call me today that said, basically in a panic, hey, I'm being told that there's no space. We need to plan now, or we're going to pay way more. So figuring out how to make sure that we are logically and systematically getting through this in a way that it does not incite fear, I think is pretty critical right now.
Do you find yourselves advising those clients sort of from ground zero of how do you actually get space, especially if you're dealing with startups? Do you find yourself being almost a planner, a space consultant, a construction manager? It sounds like with some of those companies, you need to wear a lot of hats.
Absolutely, and we function as an outsourced facilities type department. So these small startup companies have 6 scientists, and they need translation, and we can do that translation. So it's really about making sure that the companies can focus on the science and figuring out how to facilitate that around them so they can do that singular focus in the science.
So Lynn, you mentioned medical device companies, for instance, scrambling to modify existing space, or companies hearing about a shortage in real estate and wanting to find and utilize new space. So let me ask Sandy, do you have a lot of clients who come to you looking for existing spaces and having to figure out where that real estate is and how easily it can be repositioned into life sciences space?
Yes. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the panel today. So with the DC Baltimore area being the 4th largest life science market in the US, and with all of the venture capital and government funding coming to the industry, it's no surprise that the demand is high in the area for lab spaces. And because of the lack of space in the area, we are seeing developers and building owners who are looking to create, kind of standard templates, almost like a lab spec suite, if you will, that are move-in ready.
Does that even exist? Is that even possible?
No, well, you know, laboratories are hard because they are so specific. You know, every lab has different criteria, they're doing different things. But I guess you could talk to and look at buildings, you know, tenants who just want a simple wet bench space with some closed rooms, you know, for biosafety cabinets, microscopes, freezers. But there's so many challenges in getting around all of the requirements that are needed for laboratories. You look at HVAC and outside air changes that are required. You know, a standard office building only needs 1/2 to 2 air changes per hour, while a lab space needs 6 to 10 air changes per hour. That is requiring, you know, upsized HVAC equipment and duct systems.
Well, let me stop you for a moment there and ask Brian, on the planning side, do you have, or any of you really, do you have office clients? Sandy was talking about air changes, and we hear a lot about airborne disease and more outside air and more air changes. Do you have standard office clients asking to modify their own buildings for that? And could that prompt an easier translation into the type of space that Sandy is studying?
Yeah, the answer for us is yes, we've had clients approach us about doing it. And yes, once we sort of, if they're on the developer side, depending on the developer, if they approach us about doing it, some of them become afraid and some of them know what they're asking before you ask the question. If they're more on the tenant side coming in going, hey, can I move some stuff over there? Those have not gone as quickly for us. I know, I mean, I want to highlight sort of New York as an exception to this because they had that big zoning change. There you're seeing a lot more life sciences go into office, and it's a great case study for Washington, I think. We've got our own sort of infrastructure challenges, you know, 11-story buildings with really tight waffles or really tight slabs. So it's been a mixed bag.
So let me switch back to Sandy because I interrupted you, and you were just talking about how existing buildings are a challenge to modify for lab spaces for a number of reasons, including air changes.
Yeah, and even Brian just mentioned slab to slab height. That is a major concern in existing buildings because laboratories, you know, there's so much going into it, piping and duct systems, utilities, especially if there's you know, gases, you know, if there's vacuum, lab air, there's so much up in the ceiling that you have to deal with that some of the existing slab to slab heights in these existing buildings don't accommodate the needed ceiling, you know, above ceiling distances that are needed. When you look at steel versus concrete buildings, laboratories prefer concrete because there's less vibrations than steel. However, as you get higher up in a concrete building, I know that scientists who are working with their high-powered microscopes definitely notice the sway that you would have in a building. So those are some concerns, in addition to the structural loading that might be required for heavy equipment, lab equipment. There's so many different considerations that have to be looked at that you step back and say, is the creation of a standard spec suite even possible?
And one thing to bring up there, Sarah, is it's very challenging to modify an office building into a lab building. But if you perform your due diligence, if you get the information, if you have a facility assessment, if you know what the current loads are, you can go into it from a data perspective and say, here's why and here's why not. So
absolutely,
I'm usually not the positive poly, but with my clients in terms of we have to make it happen, we'll figure out a way to make it happen, do the facility assessments, and a small amount of money in an assessment is nothing compared to designing, redesigning, and then potentially having to build and lose the market share because they're not to market quick enough.
So you're getting a lot of requests to do those facility assessments, and how often do those turn into actual projects for you?
So the facility assessments, actually, we typically, when we come in, and if they were brought in after the lease is signed, our recommendation is to do a facility assessment before there's a signature on the lease. So in a lot of cases, we're coming in after the fact because they're having to go so quick, and we're having to do a facility assessment after the fact.
Why do you want them to do it before the lease is signed, ideally?
So if they don't have enough infrastructure for power, if they don't have enough airflow for HVAC, if the slab thickness is not strong enough to hold the equipment or the fill finish equipment that are going on it, there's so many things that could come up that if you have people that have done this by your side to walk you through it, it doesn't have to be as scary. But it is ripe for people to be taken advantage of, and, oh, it's an office space, I'll convert it to lab. It's just not that simple.
Well, yeah, you want to go in with both eyes open.
Absolutely.
You want to know what the challenges are ahead of time.
So regionally, where do you see some of this activity happening? I think we all assume that it's all in Montgomery County and all along I-270. So I guess first question for any of you who care to answer it, why is that? And secondly, are there other areas that we should be looking at? And what's the best way to do that?
Well, definitely with the money that's coming in from Operation Warp Speed, Montgomery County companies are seeing the benefit of that. Obviously, all of us have heard about Novavax and Emergent Biosystems that have received large sums of money for the COVID vaccine specifically. But they're joining many companies that are in that 270 corridor.
And there's a lot of companies, if they're coming offshore onto stateside, that are looking at North Carolina because land is so inexpensive. So there's large parcels of land, large manufacturing facilities could easily go into the North Carolina market. And we are seeing a lot of activity in RTP.
Lynn, when we talked in preparation for this, you told me a little bit about why some of that was happening and some of these reshore efforts. Could you talk a little bit about why you're seeing some of that activity and where you think that market might go?
Sure. So I'll give an example. One of our clients is a pharmacist and was working on COVID and was in the hospital and experienced a shortage of generic drugs. Come to find out, the active pharmaceuticals, the API, had to be sourced offshore. So they got funding to manufacture the active pharmaceutical ingredient stateside, so we can truly be independent and be US grown. So what we have created is a collaboration called Rapid Reshore and Development, and it's a collaboration to help site those companies, strategically align them to select areas where there are incentives, plenty of space, et cetera, et cetera. The ultimate would be everything is materials and the supply chain is ultimately able to be restored because we're doing this stateside. So we take companies that are coming from overseas and walk with them through, they say they might want to be in New Jersey, but they need 50,000 square feet, one floor. These are things that you have to consider. Where is the best place to put these folks, and where is the best place to pull a employee pool from? Where is the subject matter expertise for the manufacturing?
So Lakshmi, do you see any crossover between your life sciences clients and your healthcare clients as far as looking at space or even wanting to be in proximity or in the same space?
So as Brian mentioned, there's a lot of collaboration between health systems and life sciences, clients. So there is a lot of shared space. There's, that's the whole, Brian was talking about the, the health campus 2.0, and it's all it's all about the collaboration between the two, so the science can translate into use sooner and more efficiently. But I think what has happened is in 2020 with the COVID, as the innovation potential kept growing and employment in life sciences and the demand kept growing, real estate really didn't keep up, and it's still not keeping up. And as we, what we are seeing in the market from the life sciences clients mostly is trying to find those spaces that can be used in collaboration with health systems. And also on the flip side of it, to Lynn and Sandy's point, we are seeing a lot of adaptive reuse in the market. A couple examples would be T-Mobile data centers and a couple other data centers that were big candidates for adaptive reuse for a quick conversion into life sciences facility and convert into an efficient, accessible, GMP compliant facility with all the infrastructure already there. Even the Novavax example that Sandy took, they converted a former industrial building. And the new development they're talking about was planned earlier for a mixed use development. And the other MOB developments that were in the market are also pivoting to a shared use, or the landlords converting into 50-50 medical and lab use, because of all the consolidation that's happening on the health system side and the increase in demand that the market is unable to meet on the life sciences side.
So we are getting, go ahead, Brian, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to offer my speculation in terms of timeline for, so my money would be on, for the next 24 months, I-270 for life sciences. Healthcare is going to come back to life, but it has really taken a pause for capital projects. After that 24-month period, I would not be surprised to see Fairfax County begin to be much more aggressive with this. And then to pivot it out longer term, I'm very bullish on DC. And I actually think the two, finishing MedStar, finishing the Georgetown Hospital expansion, and then the two other hospitals that'll be online by then are going to be these incredible anchors for not just clinical care, but also probably some population health / life science implementation. So it's, I don't know, I'm excited to be in DC for the next 10 years.
So going back to your earlier comment about DC perhaps being an academic town.
I'm excited about it. I don't
Where-
think we'll quite be Boston level, but it'll get close.
Mhm.
Well, Brian, you're probably right because of the St. E's campus and also the old Walter Reed campus. Those are all getting developed now into healthcare, life sciences type of buildings.
I mean, God bless Charles and what they're doing. And I think the Johnson & Johnson lab prototypes, I mean, I know people talk about them at a high level. Dig into that J&J prototype for a lab, for a life science template. It's really compelling.
So alternative financing, public-private partnerships, private-private partnerships, private not-for-profit partnerships.
If I'm an investor in commercial real estate, I want to take my money out of Class A office and I want to move it into life sciences and healthcare.
Right.
So because with this great reshuffle, I don't know what's going to happen with Class A office.
Right.
We've all been doing this since March. It's bumpy. I mean, I got a 6-year-old upstairs who's wanting to know when I can go outside and play with him, but it's not the end of the world that we all thought it was going to be from a productivity standpoint.
Yeah, and Sarah, to your point about the Montgomery County and, picking off of what Brian was saying, it's all this venture capital, funding that's actually feeding those startups that were spurring all over that area. Right now it's expanding to Rockville, Frederick, and it's actually moving over to suburban Maryland as well. We are showing some tremendous growth in that area, because all these startups that were kind of clustered around that area are rapidly expanding with increased funding that they are seeing. And they were there because of the incentives they got from the county, right? And now they are expanding and moving into adjacent areas. And we are actually seeing growth up north into Maryland as well.
Well, yeah, even Baltimore and Frederick are seeing increased growth because, well, frankly, the closer into the city is running out, is no availability.
Yes.
So they're going further out. Yeah, you're right, Lakshmi.
And Johns Hopkins provides amazing support to those companies that they bring into their Fast Forward program. So we're actually, since they've put the 1812 Ashland Avenue incubator in, there have been 3 companies that we've worked with that have spun out from there that now need between 5,000 and 20,000 square foot of space. So Hopkins does a great job of nurturing their companies, and they're spinning out now as a result of build outs that happened about 2 years ago.
And they will do a facility assessment before they lease, right, Lynn?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, and most of that money is coming direct from NIH. Johns Hopkins is one of their biggest recipients of funding.
So I definitely want to leave some time for questions. I know we got started a few minutes late, and I'm sorry about that. It's now 5. Bob or Steve, do we have any questions from the audience?
Sarah, I don't see any on my screen, and I'll let Steve confirm, but I don't see any at the moment, but we may want to give people some time to type some in.
Okay, perfect. So then what I will do instead is do a little simple roundtable and ask each of you for some parting thoughts, knowing that when I opened a conversation that started with healthcare, you all ended up in life sciences, which I think is sort of the upshot of the program. But Brian, parting thoughts for today.
On that note, don't count out clinical care. I think when you get from the life sciences into the delivery side of things, people are wrapping their brains around what that's going to mean. I just think that right now they have other items that are more pressing at hand. And once they get through this, I think that they'll realize that they need to catch up, because this glacier of demographics and healthcare demand has not stopped. We haven't stopped getting older. And folks like my parents are going to still want really great healthcare. And given the current events, if you know a nurse, give them a hug, because they're going through a lot.
That's a good parting thought. Lakshmi?
I want to pick up where Brian left off. I completely agree. Healthcare and the demand for healthcare is not going to go away. I would like everyone to foster innovation within each of your firms and within the industry, collaborating like we are doing right now to heighten our productivity and support our health systems and life science clients in the major challenge that is in front of them. The health systems have to bolster and get much more efficient delivering care, and at the same time preparing for emergency response if they were to be hit by it, which will eventually happen in the future. And on our life sciences side, to help them adapt to more acute consumer and patient needs, on a very short-term basis, and get creative as to how we can support them achieve their goals. They have lofty goals in front of them, and we're all here to support them. So let's just do it together and think outside the box.
Lynn, how about you?
So this time is definitely hard to get through, but the thing that is really exciting to me is the innovation that can come out of this. Imagine how much innovation, if we all kept our minds open like they've been over the past 6 to 8 months to how to make things work, we could facilitate within the sciences. There's miniature manufacturing facilities that are being built to respond to this. 6 or 8 months ago, that machine wasn't even a concept in someone's brain. So to me, I know change is hard. We always resist change. I don't like change. No one likes change. But in this instance where we're having to sit and focus on how things are changing, why not use it to foster innovation? Like Lakshmi and Brian had said, figure out ways that we can boost up the small companies really to help everyone get boosted up. Because what's the saying about when the water's up, everybody's boat is up? I screwed that up, but you get my drift.
The rising tide, yes.
Yes.
Sandy, parting thoughts.
Yeah, just to tap on what Lynn said, you know, if you or your company haven't done any work in the healthcare life sciences market before, like, don't be afraid. Jump in, learn the technologies, learn the terms that we've been using, learn about the equipment that scientists use. It's so exciting. It's a very unique market, but I thoroughly enjoy the challenges that we always find to be able to help scientists. And, you know, it becomes a passion. It becomes a place where you can have purpose in life, knowing that even though it's a very small part of the puzzle, you help to solve that vaccine, or you help to find a cure, or whatever. Or it's exciting. It's an exciting place to be.
I definitely agree with that. And now that it's employee review season, you know, I've been talking to a lot of my team members about why we do healthcare and life sciences construction. And there's no more compelling why than the ones we have to do what we do. So hats off to all of you for serving these clients and for having a passion about it. I do have a question. My friend Mark Drury, and I'm paraphrasing you, Mark, what he didn't hear about was the attraction to Montgomery County for regulatory reasons. Can anyone address why that area has attracted life sciences tenants? And are there regulatory reasons that's happening? And do you think those reasons will change? And furthermore, Brian mentioned DC as perhaps the next hotspot for life sciences. Do we think DC will follow suit with some of those regulatory benefits?
So my opinion is just my opinion, and there's fewer attendees on, so I can speak a little more freely. But honestly, in my opinion, the reason that folks go to Montgomery County is the perception of the FDA being there. And some of the companies that are, and I don't want to mention names because I'll jinx them, but some of the companies that are closest to the FDA actual locations get very few surprise visits. So there is an emerging technologies group within the FDA that's working on a lot of these Operation Warp Speed activities. And I really do think that it's a perception thing. And if people want that perception, they can have it. But in terms of the Montgomery County doesn't have square footage available. So if there's someone somewhere else that can offer square footage, I think it's right for the taking.
We have another question. Another friend of mine, George Ronquette, asks, how can mechanical, electrical, specialty contractors support you and your clients to provide value and out-of-the-box thinking to your customers? And I'll put that to Lakshmi first. When you think about specialty subcontractors and contractors, what can they do to enhance your spate of services to your clients?
Yep. So, you know, it goes back to what Lynn was talking about, building due diligence. We do that a lot too when we look at conversions. Adaptive reuse is the key word in life sciences market right now. Stay ahead of that and talk to your real estate transactions friends and, you know, consumers, customers to see what they are looking to convert, and stay ahead of informing them, educating them as to what to look for and supporting them and, making transactions happen. As much as it is difficult, the market is looking to make things happen because it is necessary. It is a need of the day. So office conversion is hard, but it's happening because it has to happen. There's no other option in a lot of cases. So that's where you can support and, maybe put together a deck of what those differences are to educate. Just yesterday, I actually made a presentation to our brokers within JLL to educate them how the MEP systems for offices are different from lab and what to look for when they're looking to convert labs, what are the questions to ask. That's where you can help and be ready to jump in and support, and because those projects will eventually happen.
And reach out and network. Send me an email. we need quality MEP engineers that know this business, that are not just office MEP engineers, that do know life science. Email me, crying out loud.
And those facility assessments, some of these specialty contractors can look at those systems and just tell you, well, that's not going to work. That needs to be replaced. They have a spidey sense about these systems that some others of us who are more generalists do not have.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Being able to provide the clients with expectations on, the changes that are going to be required in order for them to make the, renovation work and knowing that information up front is critical to helping them make decisions.
Well, I think we are out of questions. I want to thank our 4 wonderful panelists. Thank you for doing this today. Thank you for all the time and preparation and for taking all my questions, trying to figure out how we were going to talk about what today. I hope our audience found it helpful and maybe perhaps a little different than some of the other healthcare programs that are out there. And our panelists' information is on the screen. If you'd like to take a screenshot or contact me and I will connect you if you would like. And with that, I will turn it back over to Bob and Steve to close.
Thanks, Sarah. And I want to thank you for all the hard work you did in preparing this panel today, and to the panelists themselves. Everyone did a great job. And we look forward to maybe hearing an update. Maybe it might be a chance for an update down the road to see how things are evolving over time and what opportunities we'll have. With that, unless Steve has any closing remarks, we'll wrap it up for the day.
Yeah, I'll just add that we do have the full recording of this presentation that we can put onto our website. It's going to be pretty long, and also the PowerPoint slides that we should be able to post by tomorrow if anybody wants to access those. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you to all the panelists. We really appreciate your time.
Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.